Hi, this is Dr. Patty Gilbot, and I'm from Gracie May Advocate Center. Today's topic is to talk about suicide and suicide prevention. It's a really hard topic to talk about, but we're going to start that conversation by first discussing your basic needs. And living, breathing, sleeping, getting up and facing your day, those are all part of our basic needs. We're going to start this conversation first by talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a theory that we use in psychology, and we apply it in a clinical treatment program so that you can better understand where you're at in your progress. It's really hard to focus on higher levels of need if you can't get your basic needs met first. So let's start there. Let's start with talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The physiological needs that people are struggling with include having air to breathe, the high quality of air, food to eat, water, sleeping, and just basically your homeostasis. One of the things that we really want to focus on when we're talking about suicide prevention is to protect at all costs your physiological needs. The most common thing that happens when people are feeling suicidal is that they are not sleeping. Staying up all night, sleeping all day, is not good for your body. Biologically, that's not how we're constructed, and biologically, you're doing your body a lot of harm, which means you're also doing your mind a lot of harm. When people come into treatment because they're suicidal, the very first thing we talk about together is how important your sleep cycle is. It takes your body at least 4 hours of good, solid sleep time to get through an entire REM cycle. That means you go from a deep sleep to a light sleep to the REM sleep, back to the light sleep, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll hit that deep sleep again. If you're not hitting that full cycle, you are not resting and recovering. And sleep is the only time that your brain can recover from stress. So that means if you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. And stress is lethal. The body cannot take an exorbitant amount of stress. And so what we're talking about here today is, first of all, place your sleep as your number one priority. Protect it. Do what you can to make changes in your life. And what we're learning more and more about, and I'm sure that you probably heard about it, is the effect of the blue light filters on the screens that we watch. So whether it's a smart TV or a flat screen TV, your tablets, your cell phones, those blue lights disrupt what we call melatonin inside your brain. And when that melatonin is disrupted, it's not developing enough of an urge to sleep. And so that melatonin is kind of like a natural chemical inside your brain. And when you get enough of it, it makes you tired and then you want to stay asleep. That melatonin is really powerful. You can buy it as a supplement over the counter. For some people, it works really well. It doesn't work for everyone. But you'd want to talk about that with your doctor before you start any kind of a supplement or vitamin or over-the-counter regimen. But we do encourage that if you are using blue screens, such as your smartphone, right before you go to bed, it's probably not helping your sleep patterns. So pay attention to that. The other thing that we know about suicide is that there's a huge concern for safety, which is the second part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The security of the body sometimes is related to employment, financial stress, having enough family, having enough health, having enough property in your life. Whatever that is, the safety, the security of yourself, that is most important after the physiological. If you're struggling to know how you're going to pay your bills, that amount of stress just builds and builds. And when stress is building us, remember, it's affecting our physiological state. And so if you're having a lot of financial strain and you're very worried and you're stressed out, you're not going to be getting a good full REM cycle. And so these two things go really hand in hand. So what we often find in a suicidal patient is that they're talking about not feeling like they belong to someone, or feeling very lonely, or feeling like there's a loss of relationship with people. That's important to talk about. But with suicide prevention, your counselor is going to talk to you first about your physiological needs and then your safety and security needs. Because if those two things aren't being met, we're not going to be very helpful talking about love and getting connected to other people. Those connections are certainly important. I won't underestimate the power of one good friend or one important person in your life. However, if you're not sleeping, even that person can't rescue you. So it's really important to think about how your sleep is affecting you and how you're taking care of your body otherwise. Now, this is good practice, but what happens in a suicidal episode is that you start walking around the perimeter of your thoughts. And I like to call it a vortex because it's like this imaginary black hole, and you're walking around the rim of that hole, and you entertain the thought of getting a little closer and a little closer. And if you're not careful, you get sucked into those dark thoughts. And when you're sucked in, it's really hard to get out. And so if you find yourself walking around the rim and you're entertaining those thoughts, that's the first time you should be reaching out. And don't hesitate to reach out. There are so many different ways to do that. You can call our office. We generally can get you in same day or next day appointments. We can consult with you on an emergency basis if you're a patient of ours. In Eastern Iowa, we have mobile crisis units. In some other areas of the state, there's mobile crisis units. We also have the National Suicide Hotline, and that hotline number oftentimes is answered here locally. Foundation 2 is one example of a suicide crisis line, and they answer local calls, even if you call the national hotline. You can call the hotline at 1-800-273-8255, or an easy way to remember that is 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K. We also have the ability to chat either online through a chat group, or you can also chat via text. For texting, you just type the word home to the number of 741-741. You start the chat. What's awesome about the suicide prevention hotline numbers is that there are people who are trained to help you as you're walking around that perimeter. They're trained to make sure that you're not going to be sucked into that vortex. They have resources available to you. They can help connect you to the mobile crisis units. If they're available in your area, those folks are even trained and very, very helpful. It is not anyone's goal to make you go to the hospital. It's only the goal to keep you alive. When you're working with a crisis hotline folks, it's important to remember that they are not licensed counselors. They're not licensed therapists. They are there for the moment of the crisis. They're temporary, and they're able to get you through a rough, dark moment, but they are not the ongoing treatment plan. When you're facing suicidal ideation, it is really important to make sure that you're connecting yourself with a good therapist. And if it's not easy to find a good therapist, then let us know and we can help you find the perfect fit, or let us know we can, even if you're not in our area, we have access to all kinds of resources on the internet. 211 is a great resource through United Way. You can look in your area anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the country, they list all kinds of resources for folks. Our goal is to make sure that you can survive depression, you can survive any kind of financial strain, that you can survive all kinds of dark moments that pop up in your life. The only permanent change, the only thing you can't take back, is to take your life. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we are reaching out to you if you're willing to reach out to us. And we can make that happen. I'm going to leave you with one last thought. Everything in life is a do-over, except death. And so we're going to make sure that we focus on suicide prevention as one of the major components, the major mission of the Advocate Center. We've spent 10 years building a quality program to make sure that we can integrate families and resources together, that we can bring communities and fill those communities with hope. One of the projects that we have in mind for that is actively working on building partnerships in our community so that there are several different avenues to make sure there's no wrong door when somebody needs help. So with that thought in mind, we appreciate the courage that it takes to call. We appreciate the courage that it takes to talk, and we recognize the difficulty it is when you're asking for help. When asking for help is too hard, maybe just reach out and text, and that's where your story can change.